So I've been involved with a number of things during my career. I was part of the transition from VHS to DVD. It was a tape to digital transition, much like we're talking about today. But how many of you in 1995 said to your non-techie friends, "I'm working on DVD," and they responded, "You're working on underwear?" How many actually had that happen? I don't know if Mark, were you here? Were you part of that? It was amazing. I had all these people. But I've also worked on the transition from film to digital cinema. Again, tape to digital. And many of you told your non-techie friends in 2005, "I'm working on digital cinema," and they respond, "Isn't that already Dolby Digital?" And in some ways they were right. Digital is such a fuzzy word. We never found a common logo for digital cinema. It still seems to be Dolby Digital. And today we're in the midst of yet another tape to digital conversion. This time it's IMF. And how many of you tell your friends that you're working on IMF and they respond, "You're working on the International Monetary Fund"? Clearly they were wrong. They are actually, I think, interplanetary magnetic field. That's my favorite of the lines. I think there are 130 or so, I think Wade checked it, 130 acronyms that mean IMF. So my suggestion for your next transition as you look forward another 10 years is to find something that reminds people of drinks, not underwear, preferably one with an umbrella. So today we have an opportunity to share our visions of this transition from digital, from tape to digital, to understand where it came from, who's using it, the level of maturity, and what we can do with it. Now, IMF is not the same thing to all users. You're all going to see this as a blind man sees an elephant. It's not the same. Neither was DVD or digital cinema or the interweb. Different to everybody. And that's what makes a really good format. So this morning we've got a number of folks who are early adopters of IMF, or at least they have arrows in their back. And they're going to share some of their experiences, and then we'll have Q&A to answer some of your detailed questions as we go along. My guess is that versions of IMF have been around for about 10 years now. Some of you have been working on it, and you've been using it in a very similar way. And the formalization is really just coming into being. It's probably been about 6 months since we can really say this is really formalized, though the standards were about a year ago they got finalized, but now they're beginning to come out with systems that really work. And it's thanks to the hard work by SMPTE and hundreds of hours of great work by many companies and individuals. So while this may be the first exposure for you of this, for many of us, it's part of a 10-year, 10-step program on IMF. And the ideas and sophistication of IMF are well established, and it really works. And by the way, I refer to those early adopters that are creating files and systems as IMF-ish, or IMFish. And I've been working with the brains of IMF for the past few years, helping get the standards set and embraced. And I certainly don't know on all of the technical details, but that's why a lot of people in the room today have those technical details and can share them if we need to. So two folks who are going to speak after me, give us some insights into their world, is Emmanuel Bord, is Executive VP of Sony Pictures Digital, and Chris Feitner, Director of Content Partner Operations at Netflix, and we'll have full introductions later. Following this, we're going to add Mike Krause from Disney, Nick Mitchell from Technicolor, and Pierre Lemure from Sanflo Consulting for the Q&A discussions. And of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Let there be food. So let's get started. So let me lay the groundwork of where we are and how we got here, and share the views of where we're headed. It's always good to look back at the progression of a major change with a perspective of time. You can ignore all those silly dead ends that occurred along the way, making it seem like we were really smart and it was a simple straight line path from where we started to where we ended. The joy of selective memory. In the old days, Post sort of operated in a linear way. Remember that selective memory part? Post houses made lots of money doing tape duplication and QC, not to mention film print replication. How's that going these days? We mainly shipped out tapes. Lots and lots of customized tapes in English, French, subtitled, closed captions, airline cuts, TV cuts with commercials. Lots and lots of tapes. Tapes aren't doing that well these days. And production moved non-linear. Final Cut Pro, Avid, and the standards kept shifting from 480p SD to 720p, sort of HD, 1080, real HD, to 2K, 4K, UHD, 5K, 8K. Well, things changed. It was obvious that the tape-based world, especially for delivery, was going to go away to replace by something else. At least that's what, in hindsight, it was obvious that's going. At the same time, there was a growing need for the distribution of digital video products in a variety of formats. Both studios and post houses began to develop digital systems internally and with their partner post houses to assemble the various distribution elements automatically. Apple, Google, Amazon, Netflix led the way to requesting the various masters in various formats. And it was getting very complicated very quickly with no standards for delivery. It was messy. And so many internally began to consider the possibility of defining a common studio standard to be used inside of post houses and the studios for the storage and creation of the various deliverables. Well, that was a nice thing to think about. But over in another industry, digital cinema had made the progression, 2005-ish, to move to digital. It was well underway. It started from film, from an original camera negative to release print, again tape, to digital, where we created this thing called a digital source master, DCDM, digital cinema distribution master, a digital cinema package. Keep that name in mind. Digital cinema package ended up being the item that gets distributed to the theaters that has all these different versions on it. How many people know about DCPs? And I thought some of you wouldn't. Well, maybe we'll ask, how many people have not heard of DCPs? Okay, you're coming at it with a much better understanding than I was hoping for. That's fabulous. So what this DCP adventure was very good in terms of cost for studios, quality, flexibility, and organization of everything going on. The first was researched by SMPTE, then by a joint group, DCI, which issued the first drafts specification in 2005 and handed it over to SMPTE for standardization. And this was key to the creation of the DCP. The DCI specification and the following DCP included a tremendous number of fixed designs, all the picture, sound, flow reels, basically on the JPEG 2000 as the core compression standard used in that. And it was because of a lot of reasons, but one of which it was license-free. And that was one of the primary reasons for choosing it. And it went reasonable in terms of the quality at 150, 200 megabit per second for a standard 24 frame. Defining the multi-language, multi-channel audio, closed captions, on-screen subtitles, encryption, which in addition provided data integrity and a host of other features. It was a fabulous spec that is working well. So what we learned from that is that the DCP, being delivered today to hundreds of thousands of theaters, well, at least 150,000 theaters on a daily basis, it's working, and working extremely well. It creates all the domestic versions and international from the same set, for the most part, of core assets. And these are extensible systems that have gone further beyond what we originally specified already in the last few years to add motion seats and immersive sound as part of it. So it's a good standard which is extendable to moving to the other place. The DCP structure has some unique new features. The ability of adding new elementary assets, new audio, new subtitles, new video segments after the main version was already completed and shipped to the theater. It's called a supplemental package. We can really keep that in mind as we move forward. That supplemental package is really important. The only high-level feature that was missing was a way of specifying the output file and compression type for creating a file for distribution, since digital cinema essentially had a specified output projector. With this as a background and the desire of the studios to have a single standard, there was a formalization done in a group called the Entertainment Technology Center at USC. And this is a group sponsored by many studios and many post houses, including, I think, Technicolor and Deluxe, in coming up with the first definition of what is the IMF. And that's where it changed from being a digital video master, which was the original name for IMF in following DCP, and they changed it to IMF because that was less ambiguous in the name. It was a good first step. But similar to the DCI spec as it came out, it was a starting point and allowed from that to the standardization within SMPTE to come up with the real definition. And so the flow of this was production, post-production, meaning we've got a finished product before it comes out. One version goes off to digital cinema. Potentially another version goes out to broadcast, though that's not clear that that would go that direction. And the third one becomes the IMF for the other distribution means. I think that there's some thoughts, and I think we're going to see more of that, where actually the broadcast comes off of the IMF. But there is a condition that the IMF may also be the source for DVD or Blu-ray as a source on that. So a lot of discussions, and we're still working out all the details, especially when you get to the subtitles along the line. Briefly, you can take a simple IMP and create many, many different versions of that using the composition playlists. I won't go into much detail of this because I think Chris is going to go into this in a bit more as he describes what Netflix is doing with the design. But suffice it to say, you have multiple composition playlists that point at the same package to recreate multiple versions output. And in this case, we have one in English, one in German, with two outputs, and you create roughly both a Netflix output and a German broadcaster output to kick them out. So there's lots of ways of mixing and matching with the same package as we move forward. But look at this chart that you saw earlier. We've now come up with the IMF, with the assets, with supplemental packages that can come along with it, with the CPLs and OPLs, sorry for all the acronyms, to create the different files and all the different file deliveries along the way. Well, this was the original concept of the IMF, but that's not how it's going. What's really happening is that we're now beginning to think of it as a delivery package that goes to the individual distributor partners, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, Google, Apple. That you actually take the entire package, they'd get the whole package, and then create the various versions that they need to spit out for their individual customers. So it shifted a bit. It isn't it wasn't designed to be, very key, it wasn't designed to be a mastering or origination format. It wasn't designed to go into making the product. It was taking a final product and moving it forward. It was not designed to be an archive format, but I question that. It might become an archive format as time goes on. As the standard really settles in, we may use this as archive. But it wasn't originally as a delivery package, but I think now that's the primary use of it. I think that's what we're going to see as time goes on. So a lot of things have changed. Okay, so let me go into a little bit about what's happened inside and in terms of the specs so that some of these other names make sense to you. In the design of the SMPTE spec, we have core documents that cover the aspects of audio, video, the packaging, MXF, the wrapping, playlists, etc. And then a set of applications were designed. What we realized is that we had different needs that were sort of a class based on the core that we had along. Application 1, which is uncompressed image, has not been defined in detail. We'll see if it ever is needed, and therefore that one doesn't exist. So we start with 2. Many of us start with 2 and a lot of things. 2 and 3 have both been defined. 2 is the one that's basic, shorthand wide, it's based on JPEG 2000, and application 3 is SSTP compression standards. Both of them, they both have HD. Application 2 did not have HD at the beginning, and we kicked it up to UHD because that's where the market has driven us. So application 2 and application 2 extended cover both HD and UHD, or sort of 4K-ish. But there's room for more. We may have other profiles defined, but they're all consistent with one another and very similar to what's going on in DCPs or digital cinema side. Even the applications are pretty broad. It's going to take a while to build authoring systems that cover all the features of any one of the applications, or pair of applications in the case of 2 and 2 extended. So in a case of running before you walk, you sometimes may not need to run that fast, so let's start a little simple. So if we take application 2 and break it into what we've called flavors, this eye chart, if you can read it, you're better than I am. But you can see what we've begun to work in the parties is we have a whole bunch of definitions which are making up, on the left-hand side, making up what is a flavor, or what are the aspects of a particular one. I'll blow this up in just a second. And then each column is a different sort of subset or a flavor that we may want to use. And we're focusing at first on the first 3 flavors. So let's make it so you can read that. Hopefully you can do that. So the first one, which is the flavor B1, this was tested in a couple of weeks ago, October 24th at Netflix. We had 7 companies with equipment, and they were making IMFs based on source material that was provided by studios and other folks. They were making the IMFs, sharing them in a shared file system. Other people were reading them and decoding them and displaying them. Well, we're actually seeing it now working. Multiple vendors, multiple systems working, and that's what we need to have. It's what certainly happens in the digital cinema world. So the first one, which is the UHD, or 4K-ish solution, we have audio defined. We have the MCA, which is multi-channel audio labeling going on. You can see the different specs that are there, but if you take a look over at the second one, flavor 2B, that's also UHD, but a little bit higher quality. One of our studio partners has been pushing for a little bit higher quality, so we're testing that. But there's some issues that in the spec that don't quite meet that, but we're trying to get it to work now. The third column is one to HD content, but it involves commercial breaks and other assembly that will be needed along the way. So these are great three new little flavors that are being done, and we're certainly going to learn a lot more about. It does have a lot of flexibility. And the rest of what goes on in that, so you can see we've got markers and other aspects of this. One of the issues that's been working on is the closed caption part. Right now there's text in there, but some people need the 709 tunnel to be able to use for broadcast side, so we're working on that one. That's not yet fully operational. But we now have those first 3 flavors are pretty close to working and interchanging at this point in time. And they're meeting the needs of a lot of the clients already. And Chris and Emmanuel will probably be able to talk about that in a little bit more detail. So there are many flavors of IMF, which include many of them with umbrellas. So where are we now? The standards have been published, and we're at about 1-year review. We are still working inside of SMPTE in this plug fest, where we test out the flavors and interchange with multiple vendors. And we are having a very strong pull from our distributor partners in particular for UHD content, since there isn't a tape-based solution for that. And I think we're going to see it start at the UHD and move to the HD as time goes on, sort of backwards from what I would have originally suspected as we get the IMFs moving forward. The core is working extremely well. Basic image, synchronization, sounds, subtitles, those are working very well, in my opinion, of what we've seen so far. And we're beginning to go into the advanced features as we go along. And we've had tremendous support for IMF as time has gone on in the last 3 or 4 years in particular. All the studios have provided support, both from the ETC standpoint and then their participation in all of the standardization areas. It takes a lot of money and effort. I do want to point out, in particular, Disney has been very instrumental in funding a number of us consultants. They have helped my paying of mortgage payments in support of this and evangelizing this in the standardization process. And a number of us have been there, but we've had chairmanship of these groups, and Disney has been really stepped up to the plate to make this happen. But Fox, Sony, Universal, and Warner Brothers, of which I see a number of the folks here, of those, either have IM-FISH systems working actively today and are internally and looking at how they can create output products from this, or might even convert their internal one to an IMF standard as time goes on. But I don't think that's going to happen very quickly because they've got years worth of product in their vaults in this new standard. So it's going to take a while for them to shift over if they decide to do that. But I suspect that we'll see shifting occur over time. Had tremendous company support. What we see in the anything from Amberfin and obviously Rohde and Schwarz as their involvement here. These companies have been coming to and testing content and making sure it's interoperable. The individual Deluxe Technicolor, our post houses, Modern Video Film are all also involved with this. And if I missed your name on this one, yell at me, catch me later on, and I'll add your name, because I'm trying to get as many, but I'm sure I missed them. And certainly Netflix has been very active, especially recently, in support of IMF. And we think that the other major distributors, Apple, Amazon, Google, are all watching this space very closely, but they've all been involved and trying to decide what it is and is this going to work for them. So things are moving very well. So I wanted to thank you. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope that you will be able to get enough information to make logical decisions as we go forward. So thank you.